It was my very first birthday as a married woman, and I spent the entire day waiting for a surprise that never came, only to realize he had completely forgotten. Sitting there in the silence, a cold shiver ran through me as I wondered if the man I'd just pledged my life to even truly loves me at all. I couldn't stop the haunting thought from echoing in my mind, after only 1 month of marriage. We had been married for exactly 32 days. Just last month, I was walking down an aisle lined with white roses, looking into Arthur's eyes and thinking I had finally found my safe harbor, my forever. Tonight, that harbor felt like a vast, empty ocean. Arthur was in the next room. I could hear the steady, rhythmic sound of his breathing. He wasn't avoiding me. He wasn't angry. He had simply forgotten. I looked at my phone. No missed calls, no happy birthday texts from the man who promised to cherish me until his last breath. Earlier that evening, I had cooked his favorite, pot roast with those little carrots he likes. I kept waiting for him to say, "Put your coat on, we're going out," or even just, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." But the meal ended, he thanked me for the dinner, kissed my forehead, and went to bed to watch the news. He didn't even notice I hadn't touched my plate. It's a strange kind of pain, isn't it? It's not a scream or a loud crash. It's the sound of a heart realizing it's alone in a room full of promises. I blew out the candle without lighting it. The wick stayed white, just like the future I thought I was building. You have to understand, it wasn't always this cold. If it had been, I never would have said I do. Arthur was the man who noticed everything, or so I thought. When we first started dating 2 years ago, he was the person who remembered how I liked my tea, steeped for exactly 4 minutes, no sugar. He remembered the name of my first pet, a scruffy terrier named Barnaby. "You're the most important person in my world," he used to say, and back then I believed him. I remember our first Christmas together. He had spent weeks tracking down a specific out-of-print book I'd mentioned offhand during a stroll through a library. When I opened it, I cried, not because of the book, but because someone had finally listened to me. For a woman who spent most of her 20s feeling like background noise in other people's lives, Arthur felt like a spotlight. He was steady. He was kind. My mother loved him. "He's a good provider, Sarah," she'd tell me over the phone. "He's not flashy, but he's solid. That's what matters in the long run."
And he was solid. We spent our weekends looking at houses, talking about the color of the curtains and where the cradle would go if we were ever blessed with children. We were building a life, brick by brick. Every stone was laid with the intention of permanence. The wedding was, well, it was a dream. I remember the way he looked at me when I reached the altar. His eyes were shiny, like he couldn't believe his luck. We danced to an old jazz record, and for those 3 minutes, I felt like the only woman on earth. "I'll never let you down," he whispered into my ear as the music faded. How quickly never turns into now. In that first month of marriage, I threw myself into being the perfect wife. I kept the house smelling like lemon polish and fresh bread. I left little notes in his briefcase. I thought we were in the honeymoon phase, that golden hour where nothing can go wrong. But looking back now, sitting in the dark on the night of my 30th birthday, I realized the solid man I married wasn't solid like a rock. He was solid like a wall. And walls don't listen. They don't celebrate. They just stand there, unmoving, while you beat your hands against them until your knuckles bleed. I had dropped so many hints, not because I wanted a diamond necklace or a party, but because I wanted to see if the spotlight was still on me. "Can you believe I'm hitting the big 3-0 next Tuesday?" I'd asked over breakfast. "Mm-hmm," he'd muttered, not looking up from his tablet. "Time flies." I thought he was being coy. I thought there was a reservation tucked away in his email, or a box hidden in the back of the closet. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, because that's what we're taught to do, isn't it? We make excuses for the people we love until the excuses become the very cage we're trapped in. I sat there until the clock hit 1 a.m. 30 years of life, 30 days of marriage, and I had never felt more invisible. So, after the birthday incident, I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. It's just a date, I told myself. He's stressed with work. But then the red flags started popping up everywhere, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. It started with the family group chat. I realized a week after my birthday that Arthur, his mom, Evelyn, and his sister had a separate group chat without me. I only found out because I saw a notification pop up on his phone while it was on the nightstand. The message was from his mom. "Is she still sulking about the birthday thing? Tell her to grow up, Arthur. You have real responsibilities now." My heart sank. I waited for him to reply, to defend me. Instead, he just typed, "I know, Mom. It's exhausting. I'll handle it." I wasn't a wife. I was a situation he had to handle. Then there was the dinner rule. Arthur started coming home later and later. One night I had spent 2 hours making a special lasagna. When he finally walked in at 9 p.m., he didn't even look at the table. He just pulled a Tupperware container out of his bag. "Oh, Mom stopped by the office with some of her homemade pot roast," he said, already heading for the microwave. "I already ate. You should have just had a snack, Sarah." The anger was starting to build. He didn't even notice the candles I had lit. He didn't notice I was wearing the necklace he gave me when we were engaged. He just sat there, eating his mother's food, complaining about a typo I made in one of his work emails I had helped him proofread earlier. The worst part, the passive-aggressive comments from his mother escalated. She started dropping by to check on the house. She'd move my things, literally. I'd come home and find my skincare products pushed into a corner, replaced by a traditional brand she liked. When I confronted Arthur about his mom having a key and moving my stuff, he pulled the ultimate gaslighting move. He looked at me with this pitying expression and said, "Sarah, you've been so moody lately. Are you sure you're not just looking for reasons to be unhappy? Mom is just trying to help because you're still learning how to run a proper household." I was 30 years old. I had a successful freelance career. I had lived on my own for years. But in this house, under her mother's shadow, I was being treated like an incompetent child. The 1,000 cuts were turning into a deep wound. I started noticing that he only touched me or acted loving when we were around his friends, whenever there was an audience to see what a great husband he was. But the second the door closed and it was just us, silence. I felt like I was disappearing. I was a ghost haunting my own marriage. And the scariest part, Arthur seemed to like me better as a ghost. 2 weeks after the lasagna incident, the whole family went out to celebrate Arthur's sister's engagement. It was at this ridiculously expensive steakhouse. I tried one last time. I bought a new dress, did my hair, and told myself, tonight will be different. We're out of the house, no mother-in-law in our kitchen. Boy, was I wrong. When we got to the restaurant, his mom, Evelyn, had already organized the seating. She sat Arthur between herself and his sister. When I went to sit in the empty chair next to him, she literally put her coat on it. "Oh, Sarah," she said, loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. "We're actually doing a family-only huddle on this end to discuss the wedding budget. It's boring stuff, really. Why don't you sit down at the end with the cousins? You'll have more in common with the youngsters anyway." I looked at Arthur. I was screaming with my eyes. "Say something. Tell her I'm your wife." He didn't even make eye contact. He just adjusted his tie and whispered, "Just go with it, Sarah. Don't ruin the night with a thing. It's just a chair." I sat at that end of that table for 3 hours. I watched them toast to the family legacy. I watched Arthur pour wine for his mother like he was her servant, not my husband. I felt like a stranger who had accidentally crashed a private party.
Then came the bill. It was over $1,200. Arthur's mom looked at the total, then looked straight at me at the far end of the table. "You know," she said, tapping her chin, "since Sarah is self-employed and has so much free time, maybe she should handle the 25% tip. It's only fair, considering we've been hosting her in the family all month. Think of it as your contribution to the evening." The table went dead silent. I felt the heat rising in my neck. I looked at Arthur, waiting for the solid man I married to stand up. He leaned over and whispered, "Sarah, just put it on your business card. I forgot my wallet in the car anyway. Don't make my mom feel awkward in front of her future son-in-law. I'll pay you back tomorrow." In that moment, everything went clear. The birthday silence, the lasagna, the separate group chat. It wasn't because he was busy. It was because I wasn't his priority. I was his resource. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, loud as a gunshot. "You're right, Evelyn," I said, and for the first time in months, my voice didn't shake. A guest shouldn't have to pay for a family they aren't a part of, and since Arthur forgot his wallet, just like he forgot my 30th birthday, I think it's best if he stays here with his real family. I grabbed my clutch, looked at Arthur's shocked, pale face, and added, "Enjoy the steak, Arthur. I hope it's worth the divorce papers." I walked out of that restaurant alone, and for the first time since my wedding day, I could finally breathe. So, after I walked out of that restaurant, the golden boy finally realized the quiet wife had left the building. My phone blew up. Arthur sent 42 texts in 2 hours. At first, it was, "Sarah, come back, you're being dramatic." Then it shifted to, "My mom is crying because you embarrassed her. How could you be so selfish?" And finally, the classic, "Where are you? I don't have my house keys."
I didn't reply to a single one. I went straight home, packed 2 suitcases, and checked into a hotel. But before I left the house, I did one thing. I went into the office and grabbed the marriage folder. See, Arthur and his mom thought I was just playing around with my freelance work. They thought I spent my days scrolling Pinterest. What they didn't realize was that I'm a financial consultant and designer. I had been the one managing our joint savings for the house down payment. The joint savings account? It was 90% my money from a massive project I finished right before the wedding. Arthur had only contributed about $2,000. He just assumed that since we were married, what's mine is his. The next morning, I went to the bank. I withdrew every single penny of my contribution and moved it to a private account he couldn't touch. Then I sent him a final text. The house down payment is gone. Since your mom thinks I'm just a guest, I figured a guest shouldn't have to pay for your mortgage. Use the money your mom saved on that tip to find a new place to live. He tried to sue me. He actually tried to tell his lawyer I stole from him. But I had every invoice, every receipt, and every bank trail showing exactly whose money that was. His lawyer literally told him he didn't have a leg to stand on. The best part? Because he had bragged to his family that he was the big earner and I was just stay-at-home help, he had to explain to his mom why they couldn't afford the house they were bragging about. Last I heard, Arthur is back in his childhood bedroom because he couldn't afford the rent on our apartment alone. His mom is still making him pot roast every night, except now he's 31, single, and realized too late that he traded a diamond for a piece of glass. I spent my 30th plus 1 month birthday at a spa in Bali, paid for with the money I saved from a man who didn't know my worth. If there's one thing I learned from being forgotten on my 30th birthday, it's this. Never stay in a room where you have to shrink yourself to fit in. Some people don't want a partner, they want a background character for their own life story. Don't let that be you. Your worth isn't measured by how much you can endure, but by how much you respect yourself when the people who are supposed to love you fail the test. I chose the wrong person at 29, but at 30, I chose myself. And that was the best gift I ever received.